Classic case in point is that which is the best watch in the world. It would unfortunately not be Titan, it would be Rolex. There are tons and tons of Indian politicians too. They have deposited their money in Swiss banks. Hi everyone, welcome to today's video. So this is Switzerland. It is one of the richest nations on earth. In fact, they are so rich that their per capita GDP is somewhere around 70 lakh rupees a year. So that is how much an average Swiss national earns. It's obvious that Swiss people are very rich, but what people do not know is that first and foremost, Switzerland is not a resource-rich country like the US, Canada, China, Middle Eastern countries. Second, they are a landlocked nation and their altitude is such that it is very difficult to construct things due to hilly terrains. Third and finally, they do not have inexpensive labor like in China or other Southeast Asian countries. So the obvious question comes that what has Switzerland done so well that it has become one of the most prosperous nations out there? Now let's juxtapose this example with the example of Democratic Republic of Congo, which is an African country. And here, according to World Bank data, you will find a couple of interesting points. First and foremost, Congo is one of the most resource-rich countries in the world. They have large reserves of diamond, coal, bunch of other natural resources. They also have one of the largest rainforests. So a lot of good things are happening from Congo in terms of the potential that it has. But on the flip side, as per the World Bank data, approximately 73% of their population lives on less than $2 a day. So that is how poor Congo is despite having so many natural resources. So the obvious question comes that there are nations like Switzerland which do not have much to begin with, but they are able to turn things around and make their country one of the most prosperous countries on earth. But on the flip side, we have a bunch of African countries that are faring very, very poorly. What are some of the key lessons that we as Indians should take away? By understanding these two case studies, this is the precise topic of today. You would say that, okay, why is it important for me to know? So here is a very interesting data point by Mr. Nitin Kamath. So he said that if you take away top 3% of earners in India, then the per capita GDP of India falls to roughly $600 per year. So we keep on talking about $5 trillion economy. We keep on talking about rise of fintech startups, etc., etc. But if there is no systematic wealth increase in a country like India, then people in India will stay poor. So that is the basic economic fact. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to present in simple 5 points as to what we can learn from Swiss economy and how we can implement those learnings in India to make India a more prosperous nation. So let us get the discussion started by understanding one of the key economic principles called as Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This presents an excellent framework as to why some of the nations are on the verge of growth versus why some nations might struggle forever in terms of growing. So this is what Maslow's hierarchy of needs look like. Now, when Maslow gave this framework, he termed it as a theory of human motivation. So you need to understand the growth of a nation through this pyramid principle. How? I will break it apart for you, but I will keep referring to this framework throughout the entire video. So first and foremost thing that Switzerland did well was that it maintained peace. In fact, Switzerland adopted Swiss neutrality principle, which is considered, and it has now become a proverb, so to say, that if you do not want to take sides, just be like Swiss. So that is what Swiss neutrality means. It finds its origin in military neutrality, and Switzerland is one of the nations that has not fought a war for the last approximately 200 odd years. So it is one of the most peaceful nations on earth by design. But if you compare this situation to Congo, Congo had to fight a series of wars over the last 50 odd years. There has hardly been a period of peace and undertake an economic growth agenda. So here is a very quick snippet. You can pause the video, read through it in case this interests you to learn more about the war history of Congo. So to cut the long story short, Switzerland has been one of the most peaceful nations on earth. But unfortunately, Congo has been one of the most worst hit countries on earth in terms of stability. So what is the situation in India when it comes to peace? So India is a fairly young country compared to other parts of the world. India is fairly new because India literally formed in 1947 when we got independence from the British clutches. And after that, there was a lot of turmoil which went all the way till 1975. And even now in India, there are regions which are not very peaceful as of now. So you can understand which regions I am talking about. I am not a security expert, so I will leave that discussion there. But understand the entire economic argument from an argument of peace, that for a country to grow, we need peace. And in India, there are regions now which are deeply destabilized, and our governments have worked towards it and they have made considerable progress. Now, the second key reason why the Swiss economy grew so much was very, very simple, that they planned long term. So we spoke about the fact that Swiss maintained neutrality. So that was a long-term strategic thought process. If we go back and study the history of India, even we have tried our best to follow that policy of non-alignment, but due to border skirmishes, due to the fact that the world has become more polarized over the last several decades, that stand of maintaining net neutrality for India is proving to be very challenging. Now, if we research more about the economy of Switzerland, we will understand that even there, they are very smart in terms of how they are planning long term. For example, take a look at the debt situation in Switzerland. The debt to GDP ratio in Switzerland did not go haywire even in 2020. So there are many reasons why they are able to maintain this sensible level of debt. And one of the prime reasons there is that people are very, very sensible. What do I mean by that? So this brings us to the political structure of Switzerland. So Switzerland has something called as direct democracy. So this was there in Athens, ancient Greece. And what direct democracy does is that there are a lot of referendums that are carried out and people directly vote for such policies every single time. So if there is a major tax reform that needs to happen, people in Switzerland need to vote it. Now you'll say that, okay, then people would never want to pay higher taxes. No, that is completely incorrect. In fact, there have been several referendums that have been done in the past in Switzerland where people have voted that, yes, please increase our taxes. Swiss people are very aligned with the government. They are aligned more towards logic, rational. They are very hardworking people. They save a lot. They consume locally and they are very proud of the Swiss economy and they want to stabilize it. So they do everything in their power to undertake that short-term pain that they might have to go through to foster their economy. So when you see those sensible debt levels in Switzerland, that is a real rate of growth of their economy. That growth is not artificially inflated. Now, just a very quick disclaimer, I'm not trying to criticize any nation, citizens, governments here. I'm just simply trying to tell you that what Swiss people are doing right. So that does not mean that whatever other countries are doing, that is wrong. Now, on that note, a natural question here should be that, okay, by that logic, should India also change its political structure? My argument would be yes, that a direct form of democracy is much better than a representative form of democracy. There are a lot of challenges associated in terms of changing the political structure now of a country. And to cut the long story short, it is practically almost impossible why people in power would want to move from a representative democracy. So representative form of democracy means that we pick a leader who on our behalf make all the decisions. So rather than that, should we have a direct democracy? You let me know in the comment box, and here is a very quick history of direct democracy. Now, the fourth thing that Swiss people do is that they invest a lot in human capital. Now, when it comes to research and development, a large portion of Swiss economy goes into developing the R&D resources of the country. In fact, if you check the exports that Switzerland undertakes, you will see that it is mostly in the pharmaceutical domain where the quality of ingredient matters a lot. So Swiss is known for its quality. If you look at brands like Nestle, Swiss chocolate, handmade watches, Rolex, Roger Federer. So all these are brands that indicate quality. So the economic game that Switzerland tries to play is very simple, that they import a lot of things, they add value to it, and then they ship it out or export it. And they have maintained positive trade deficit year after year. So that is a simple thing that Swiss people are doing year in, year out, decade in, decade out. And they have added a lot of wealth to their economy by following this very basic principle of adding to human capital and portraying quality. Now, the basics of creating a good human workforce is fairly simple, that people should be hardworking, sincere. They should be supported by the government in forms of resources. For example, spending more on healthcare, education, R&D. And that is one of the prominent reasons why you will see that the number of patents per capita for a country like Switzerland is the highest in the world. What is it that India can learn and do? It is fairly simple. So number one, we can spend on productive expenditure, especially healthcare and education. These are two areas where more money should be poured just by looking at Swiss economy. Second key thing where I feel that we are not going right is that we are focusing a lot on low margin product based economic outputs. We are not focusing a lot in terms of growing our service or export driven economy. A classic case in point would be IT services, that for example, when it comes to Switzerland, that Switzerland is great and they have made a name out of exporting Swiss chocolate and pharmaceutical, for example. India could also grow its comparative advantage when it comes to exporting IT based services. So a lot of emphasis should be given here. Now, before outlining the final point, let me go back to Maslow's hierarchy of needs. means. So right now, if we study this pyramid from India's lens, what we will realize is that we are at level 1 and level 2 currently. That we are trying to get more people into school. We are trying to provide basic healthcare infrastructure. There is a lot of infighting that is happening. So unfortunately, we are not able to build that long-term vision. If you study Switzerland from the same pyramid principle, what you will realize is that they are roughly at level 4 and level 5, where esteem or pride or quality is associated with anything that is Swiss made. A classic case in point is that which is the best watch in the world. It would unfortunately not be Titan, it would be Rolex. Now comes the fifth and final point, which can help us understand the catalyst event that happened that accelerated the growth of Switzerland. This has to do with investor confidence, comparative advantage, and an economic theory called as RICARDO's principle of economic efficiency. So what is RICARDO's theory of economic efficiency or RICARDO's theory of comparative advantage? It is fairly simple. It simply says that if a country can do a certain work really well and most efficiently compared to other parts of the world, then it should continue to focus on that particular singular thing. And guess what Swiss people have done? They have been able to catalyze their banking industry. In fact, the world has polar opinions when it comes to Swiss banking. Some people say that Swiss banks are very secretive. They allow hiding of money. They allow black money, fugitives, bunch of other different things. On the flip side, there are people who make the argument that, hey, show me like one nation that does not engage in shady practices. But the bottom line remains that banking has become one of the core sectors for Swiss economy, and they have been able to generate trust within their customers and also create a competitive advantage for their banking industry. So here is a very quick history of banking in Switzerland. So Swiss banks actually supported Nazis in terms of keeping their gold in Swiss banks' lockers. This has extended even in the modern world, that right now, if you take a look at several politicians, in fact, their names are there on WikiLeaks report, so you go and read it. There are tons and tons of Indian politicians too. I will not take their names. I will leave it up to you. You can comment in the comment box. They have deposited their money in Swiss banks, or probably their net banking facility working better. But to cut the long story short, the banks in Switzerland have been able to catalyze a lot of wealth from all across the globe, right from Nazi time to modern day politicians. And their banks have been able to generate trust with their customers that, hey, if you're a fugitive, you have done some shady stuff back in your home country, no problem, bring your cash to us, we will handle it. So this is the type of trust that they have been able to generate. Am I approving of that step? The answer is no. I'm simply trying to tell you the economic reality of the world where we live in. In fact, let me tell you one very interesting statistic, and it can be seen from this particular snippet, that when the COVID crisis broke out, a lot of people from India, when I say people with extreme wealth, they were able to deposit their money in Swiss accounts, and Swiss banking deposits grew at the time of crisis. Now you'll say that, okay, great, we can't turn India into a tax haven type of an economy, and I'm not advising us to, but there is a very important message here, and the message is twofold. That number one, a country should work on its competitive advantage. For India, I personally feel that it is technology and IT. If we are able to export so many of Indians to Fortune 500 CEOs, then definitely, then they can create similar companies in India, hopefully someday. And second key thing is that it is all about generating customer trust. So if India could move to technology/IT based companies which are generating a lot of economic brand value from a trust point of view to attract global customers, that will be a day we will be able to generate a lot of economic wealth. So this brings us to the last point, and I will take you to Maslow's hierarchy of need pyramid, that if we have to prioritize one of the 5 things that we talked about on today's video, where should India start? My bet would be from that orange grid, which is around safety. That if you make people safe, it generates a lot of trust within the Indian economy internally. People feel attached to the nation, and also externally, it gives investors to invest in that particular economy. Without peace, there is no growth, and even when the world grows and the peace gets destroyed, the economy can fall back into debris. That is precisely what is happening in Democratic Republic of Congo. Now, without getting into the politics, I hope you took the central message from this video, that why in a country like India, ensuring peace is probably the most important thing that could lead to significant economic development. I hope you enjoyed the video. Do let me know in the comment box, and I will see you soon.